You send the message, then you watch the screen. 2 gray ticks turn blue, and nothing happens. No reply comes, no 3 dots appear. Just a small blue check mark sitting there, doing nothing at all. And somehow that nothing ruins the rest of your evening. You know they saw it. The phone confirmed it for you. So why does it feel like being ignored? Here's the strange part. Before read receipts existed, silence after a message meant nothing. People didn't reply for hours, sometimes days. Nobody felt rejected by it, because nobody had proof the message had been seen. The silence was neutral. Today, the same silence comes with a timestamp, and a timestamp turns silence into evidence. Think about what actually happens in your body in that moment. You're standing in a kitchen or lying in bed, staring at a small blue mark on a 5-inch screen. Nothing physical has occurred. No one has hurt you. No one has even spoken. And yet, your chest tightens a little. Your thoughts start running. Did I say something wrong? Are they mad? Why would they read it and not answer? This isn't a minor annoyance. It's a measurable stress response, and researchers have been studying versions of it for years. Psychologist Kipling Williams spent decades studying what happens when people get excluded from a group, even briefly, even by strangers. In his ostracism experiments, participants played a simple ball-tossing game with 2 other players, unaware that the other players were actually computer programs. After a few throws, the program would stop passing the ball to them. That's it. No insult, no conflict, just exclusion. And within minutes, participants reported real emotional pain, lowered self-esteem, and a sense of being invisible. Being left out, even in a meaningless game with strangers, triggered the same alarm system the brain uses for physical threat. A read receipt does something similar, except it's worse, because it isn't ambiguous. With Williams's ball game, you could tell yourself it was an accident. With a blue tick, you can't. The other person didn't fail to see your message. They saw it. They chose not to respond. Your brain doesn't process "chose not to respond yet" the same way it processes "hasn't seen it." One is uncertainty. The other feels like rejection with a receipt attached. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger found something that helps explain why this hits as hard as it does. In a study using brain imaging, she found that social rejection activates a region of the brain also involved in processing physical pain. The brain, it turns out, doesn't draw a clean line between a slammed door and a stubbed toe. Being excluded registers neurologically as a kind of injury, which means that small blue tick isn't just information. It's a tiny, repeatable jolt to a system that evolved to treat social distance as danger. And that makes sense if you zoom out far enough. For most of human history, being cut off from your group wasn't an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. Humans didn't survive alone on the savannah. No claws, no fangs, no fur thick enough for the cold. Survival depended entirely on staying inside the group, sharing food, sharing protection, sharing information about where the predators were. If the group stopped responding to you, stopped including you, stopped paying attention to you, that wasn't social discomfort. That was an early warning sign of abandonment. And abandonment, tens of thousands of years ago, often meant death. Your brain still runs that ancient software. It doesn't know the difference between a tribe leaving you behind and a friend leaving you on red on a Tuesday. To your nervous system, an unanswered social signal is an unanswered social signal. The body doesn't update its threat detection just because the threat now arrives through a 5-inch screen. So every time that blue tick appears without a reply, some very old part of your brain quietly raises an alarm. Not loud enough to notice consciously, just loud enough to make you check your phone 4 more times in the next 10 minutes. Here's where it gets stranger though. You do this to other people too. Think about the last time you read a message and didn't answer right away. Maybe you were busy. Maybe you needed to think about your reply. Maybe you just forgot. In your head, that delay meant nothing. You weren't punishing anyone. You were living your life. But on the other end, someone watched that same blue tick appear and waited, and started building a small, quiet story about what your silence meant. This is something researcher Sherry Turkle has spent years writing about in her work on digital communication, the gap between how people experience their own online behavior and how they interpret everyone else's. When you go quiet, you know your own reasons. You have the context. When someone else goes quiet, you don't have their context, so your brain fills the gap with the worst available explanation.
Not because you're paranoid, because uncertainty is uncomfortable, and a story, even a bad one, is more comfortable than no story at all. Turkle's broader point is that always-on communication didn't just speed up how people talk to each other. It rewired the expectations underneath the talking. When replying instantly becomes possible, replying slowly starts to feel like a decision rather than just a fact of life. And once delay becomes a decision in someone's mind, it becomes something to interpret, something to feel hurt by. Notice the absurd loop this creates. You read a message and wait to reply because you're tired or busy, or simply not in the mood to type out a thoughtful response right now. Completely reasonable. Meanwhile, the person who sent it is sitting with a blue tick, replaying the conversation, wondering what they did. And somewhere else, right now, you are doing the exact same thing to someone who left you on read an hour ago, certain their silence means something, while being completely unaware that your own silence, just minutes earlier, meant absolutely nothing. Everyone is the villain in someone else's read receipt story, and nobody knows it. It gets even stranger once you notice how this plays out at scale. Some people turn read receipts off entirely, just to avoid generating this kind of tension, and immediately create a different kind. Now the other person doesn't even get the blue tick to obsess over. They just get silence with no information at all, which, going back to Williams's research, might be even harder on the nervous system than silence with evidence. Ambiguity doesn't resolve the threat response. It just removes the data your brain was using to manage it. Other people develop quiet personal rules around this entirely on their own. Reply within the hour, or it looks rude. Never leave someone on read overnight. Send the 3 dots quickly, even before you know what you're going to say, just to stop the silence from stretching too long. None of these rules exist anywhere official. Nobody wrote them down. They emerged the same way most social rules emerge, through millions of small, anxious adjustments, made by people trying not to accidentally hurt each other, or trying not to feel hurt themselves. And underneath all of it is the same ancient mechanism. A brain built for small tribes, trying to make sense of a world where you can be technically seen by hundreds of people a day, and still feel quietly unanswered by almost all of them. Here's the part worth sitting with. The blue tick isn't actually telling you anything about how the other person feels. It's only telling you that a message reached a server, which reached a phone, which happened to be open at that moment. It says nothing about love, or anger, or how busy someone's day has been. It is, in the most literal sense, just metadata. But your brain doesn't read it as metadata. It reads it as a verdict. So tonight, when you send a message and watch that tick turn blue, and the reply doesn't come right away, notice what's actually happening underneath the discomfort. That isn't proof of rejection. That's a very old alarm system. Misfiring on a 5-inch screen, treating a pause in a text conversation like a warning sign from a world that no longer exists. The ballgame stopped. The throw didn't come. But this time, nobody left. They just hadn't typed yet.